पॉलिसी बाजार पर 1 करोड़ रुपए का टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस केवल 450 रुपए महीने से शुरू। वाव!
Good evening, you're watching the news. I'm Nidhi Razdan and these are the big headlines tonight. The Ram Temple will be ready on the 1st of January 2024, just months ahead of the Lok Sabha elections. Home Minister Amit Shah makes the announcement, accuses the Congress of stalling the construction. Strongly disapproving of Air India's handling of a man urinating on a woman passenger on a flight and then getting no action from the airline, the aviation regulator says that Air India's conduct was unprofessional and led to a systemic failure. 50,000 people cannot be uprooted overnight, says the Supreme Court, as it stays an Uttarakhand High Court order on evicting people in Haldwani for alleged encroachments. The matter will be heard again in February. In Delhi's horrific hit-and-run case, 5 accused are sent to police custody, but the police say they are now looking for 2 new suspects. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella meets the Prime Minister and says that it was an insightful meeting. First Sundar Pichai of Google and now Nadella say they are both impressed by the India stand. The World Health Organization says that China's COVID impact is being underrepresented and that China has a narrow definition of COVID deaths. And in his sensational memoir, Prince Harry has accused his brother Prince William of physically attacking him during a fight that they had over Meghan Markle. Well, our top story tonight, Union Home Minister Amit Shah has announced that the Ram Temple will be ready and open on the 1st of January 2024, which is just months ahead of the Lok Sabha election. Speaking at a BJP function in Tripura's Agartala today, he also accused the Congress of stalling the temple's construction.
जब से बाबर तोड़कर गया तब से और जब से आजाद हुआ तब से देश आजाद हुआ तब से एक कांग्रेसी इसको कोर्ट के अंदर उलझा रहे थे और सेशन कोर्ट, हाई कोर्ट, सुप्रीम कोर्ट, फिर सेशन कोर्ट। मोदी जी आए, एक दिन सुबह सुप्रीम कोर्ट का फैसला आया और मोदी जी ने उसी दिन रामलला के मंदिर का भूमि पूजन पूरा कर मंदिर का निर्माण चालू कर दिया। और राहुल बाबा कान खोलकर सुन लो और सब रूम वालों आप भी टिकट करा लो। 1 जनवरी 2024 को अयोध्या में गगनचुंबी राम मंदिर वहां पर आपको तैयार मिलेगा।
Well, my colleague Ankit Tyagi now joins us for more on that big political story today. So, Ankit, no coincidence that it's going to actually be thrown open for people literally months before the Lok Sabha elections, and the announcement comes today, months before a string of important state elections.
That's right. There is no doubt that there are political meanings to the opening of the Ram Temple as well. This has been a core issue as far as the BJP is concerned, not only of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, but of course the founding principles of the BJP. This was one of the very, very important issues for them. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's image and narrative is going to get a boost, and we have already seen that image building exercise which has started with Mr. Amit Shah speaking at an election rally. It's not that this kind of statement has been made at a religious function, but at an election rally in Tripura, he said he gave the date for the opening of the Ram Temple, that is 1st January 2024. Though indeed it was known that somewhere in 2024 the Ram Temple would be, the construction would be completed. A lot of people were talking about that it will be just before the elections, but now a date has been set. So the BJP clearly hoping that they would be able to utilize this not only in the run-up to the 2024 general election when Prime Minister Narendra Modi seeks a third term from the people of India, but it would also, they are hoping, will help them benefit in the elections, crucial elections in the run-up in the year 2023 as well. Tripura, of course, the beginning of that election calendar. Karnataka then later, and of course the big 3 states right at the end of the year 2023. But 2 important things with this is Ram Temple is part of a larger BJP election narrative. In 2024, when it happens, it will be a huge, grand, in fact, inauguration ceremony. And we are expecting the Prime Minister, of course, like he went for the foundation laying stone of this temple, he would be there and would be projected as the man who promised and who completed his big promise to the people of India, especially to the majority community. And apart from that, this also starts a string of narrative building exercise for the BJP, the G20 summit this time, which India is the president of. And apart from that, of course, the parliament building, which will also be ready. So all these will be big achievements before Prime Minister Narendra Modi's campaign for 2024.
All right, Ankit, thanks very much for that. And the story that everyone's been talking about now for the last couple of days, strongly disapproving of Air India's handling of a man who urinated on a woman passenger on a flight from New York to Delhi and then didn't face action. India's aviation regulator has said the airline's conduct was unprofessional and led to a systemic failure. My colleague Vishnu Shom now joining us for more on that. So Vishnu, lots of developments actually on this story today. We've seen the aviation regulator. You're going to tell us more about that. And also we know who the man is who did this.
Yes, absolutely. We've got all of those details. In fact, in an extremely hard-hitting statement, the aviation regulator has accused Air India, now run by the Tatas, of being unprofessional in their handling of the situation. Those were the words used, where a man urinated on a co-passenger in business class. The regulator says that there was a systemic failure by the airline, which was devoid of empathy in helping the affected passenger. The regulator has now issued show cause notices to the pilots, the crew, senior airline executives. They want an answer in 2 weeks. What's more, there is a second report, a second incident now being reported. According to the Press Trust of India, 10 days after this incident, a passenger urinated on the blanket of a woman passenger on a Paris-Delhi flight. But here the commander of the aircraft did alert ground authorities, though the passenger was allowed to go after he wrote a written apology. We've learned that the regulator is looking into this incident as well. But here are the details of that first incident that the regulator has hit out against.
This is the business class section of an Air India 777, the same aircraft that a 70-year-old woman travelled on from New York to Delhi. After the lights were dimmed on the 26th of November, a drunk man named Shankar Mishra, seated one seat ahead of her, unzipped his pants and urinated on her. In her complaint letter, the senior citizen told the Tata Group chairperson, "I was getting ready to sleep and another passenger walked to my seat completely inebriated. He unzipped his pants, relieved himself and continued to expose me to his private parts."
Air India, which has accepted that it was lax in handling this situation, has now told the aviation regulator that their flight crew believed the senior citizen and the man who urinated on her had been able to sort out the situation.
This letter that you see was their initial complaint to the Delhi police. But now, in their response to the regulator, Air India says, the cabin crew reported the incident to the commander as there was no further flare-up or confrontation, and respecting the perceived wishes of the female passenger, the crew elected not to summon law enforcement upon landing.
But complaints have now been filed and the police are not waiting. They're on the hunt for the accused, Shankar Mishra.
He has been charged with Section 294, committing an obscene act, Section 506, criminal intimidation, 509, insulting the modesty of any woman, and also been charged under the Aircraft Act.
Interestingly, Air India, which has placed Shankar Mishra on a no-fly list for 30 days, has already been in touch with him and they've held a hearing. The letter to the aviation regulator says,
the alleged perpetrator has requested for additional documents prior to a second hearing scheduled for the 10th of January 2023.
Sadly, this is not the first time something like this has happened. In 2018, a similar incident happened on the same New York to Delhi sector as well. Serious questions being asked on how the passenger got so drunk. Was he drunk before boarding or was he served too much alcohol on board? More significantly, the airline says they need to review what to do in a serious situation, even if there appears to be a resolution between passengers. They also need to answer really hard question asked by the regulator. Vishnu Shom, NDTV.
And the other big story today, there cannot be the uprooting of thousands of people overnight. How can you ask residents to clear an area in just 7 days? That's what the Supreme Court asked today as it stayed the Uttarakhand High Court's order to evict thousands of families in Haldwani accused of encroaching on government land. The court asked the government to find a practical solution since human lives are involved.
A major relief for 4,000 families protesting on the streets of Uttarakhand's Haldwani to protect their homes and their livelihoods. The Supreme Court has stayed the eviction order of the High Court, which had ruled they were illegal occupants of railways land. The Supreme Court asked the government to find a practical solution as human lives are involved. The Supreme Court in its judgment said, there cannot be uprooting of thousands of people overnight. How can you ask residents to clear an area in 7 days? It may not be correct to say that paramilitary forces have to be deployed to remove people who have been living there for decades. Troubling, how do you deal with people who bought land in an auction and took possession after 1947 and also acquired a title? If people have lived there for 60 to 70 years, some rehabilitation has to be done. Human angle needs to be considered. We do not encourage what is going on. All of them can't be painted with the same brush. Maybe there are different categories.
कि हाई कोर्ट का जो ऑर्डर है वो उसमें अभी जो स्टे हुआ है उसमें कोई भी कंस्ट्रक्शन भी नहीं होगा किसी के तरफ से, चाहे वो रेलवे हो चाहे वो वहाँ पे जो लोग रह रहे हो वो कोई कंस्ट्रक्शन नहीं करेंगे। फिलहाल सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने रेलवेज को और अब यूनियन को कहा है कि वो एक रिहैबिलिटेशन स्कीम भी अपने दिमाग में रखें। ये मामला है जहाँ पे घर हैं, स्कूल हैं, कॉलेजेस हैं, तो बस 7 दिन के अंदर इस तरह से आप घर, स्कूल, कॉलेजेस को नहीं तोड़ सकते।
The former Uttarakhand Chief Minister Harish Rawat welcomed the top court's order.
माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट का सुप्रीम जजमेंट मानवीय मूल्यों की रक्षा हो गई। हम सब लोग चिंतित थे कि यदि डिमोलिशन होगा 52,000 लोग सड़कों पर आएंगे तो हमारे राज्य का जो मानवीय चेहरा है उस पर दाग लगेगा। और हमने 2016 में इसका प्रयास किया और एक कानून बनाया है जो राज्य विधानसभा ने सर्वसम्मति से पारित किया।
For the moment, respite for families who were faced with the prospect of no roof over their heads as the bitter chill sets in.
Well, the Supreme Court has stayed the eviction for now. The court has also asked the central and state governments to follow due process of law to find whether the residents own their property and also to consider appropriate rehabilitation schemes if the residents were to be displaced for development projects. With camera person Pujaria and Ravish Ranjan from Haldwani, this is Arvind Gunasekar for NDTV.
Meanwhile, 2 new suspects have emerged in the Delhi car horror in which a 20-year-old woman, Anjali, died after being dragged under a car for nearly 13 kilometers on New Year's Day. Now, that takes the total number of accused in the case to 7. 5 are in police custody today, and the police today said they're looking for the 2 other accused, Ashutosh and Ankush. They've both been booked for destruction of evidence. The police saying that one of the accused, Amit, who was driving the car that night, was also driving without a license. There's also new CCTV footage that shows the accused men leaving the car and looking under its tires. That's after they then decided to abandon it and fled in an auto.
किसी और के चाहने से बिना एविडेंस के, बिना फैक्ट एंड सर्कमस्टांसेस के नहीं हो सकता है। इसका पूरी तरह से उसके लिए, मर्डर के लिए आप सभी को मालूम है कि एक मोटिव होना बहुत ज़रूरी होता है, एक इंटेंशन होना बहुत ज़रूरी होता है। अभी तक का जो इन्वेस्टिगेशन है उसमें हम इस स्टेज पे नहीं पहुंचे हैं। जैसे कि मैंने आरंभ में बताया कि सीडीआर और सीसीटीवी के एनालिसिस से अक्यूज्ड और डिसीज्ड का कहीं कोई कनेक्शन हमें नहीं मिला है।
Microsoft Chairman and CEO Satya Nadella, who's on a 4-day visit to India, met Prime Minister Modi today and pledged the company's support in helping the country realize the Digital India vision. He described his meeting with the Prime Minister as insightful and applauded the government's focus on sustainable and inclusive economic growth driven by digital transformation. It comes just days after Google's boss Sundar Pichai was here. All praise for India's digital push.
It's the magic of India's stack, because everything needs a feedback loop.
That's right.
It's the yojanas and the policies and the technology stack co-evolving.
That's right.
That's just a virtuous cycle that is unlike anything I've seen, and it's just tremendous. And to your point, I absolutely think both of these as perhaps the greatest contributions that India can make to the world, quite frankly. When I think about it,
it's an incredible opportunity. The minister spoke about the depth and the breadth of talent available in the country. In our experience, we see that playing out in Google. We saw the opportunity on top of UPI. In fact, I used the UPI example in other countries around the world. I think, the fact that you can, the way the COVID relief funds show up in an individual's accounts instantly, it's remarkable.
Well, my colleague Shrija now joining us from Bangalore with more on that story. So, Shrija, we've seen two big visits now in the course of the last few days. Sundar Pichai, now Satya Nadella, and really the focus on India's push to digitize, various platforms.
Well, of course, in fact, Satya Nadella is here in India for the 4-day visit. He went on to, in fact, address the crowd, especially interacting with some of the, industry leaders. He did stress upon especially the India stack. And he also lauded, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's achievements in terms of especially how India has transformed digitally. Now, both of them, if you're talking about even for that matter Sundar Pichai or even for that matter Satya Nadella, both of them even focused and lauded India for its UPI payments, also in terms of the interfaces, the India stack, and which has transformed the lives of especially globally, including especially locally within India as well. So as far as Nadella is concerned, he did go on to talk about how India is also trying to partner with, other companies globally, in fact, to implement and bring in terms of what exactly was, the vision of Prime Minister Narendra Modi in terms of bringing the India stack. Now, the India stack that you're talking about is just about the, the payments interface in terms of the National Corporation for Payments as well. So that is something which, as far as Mr. Satya Nadella went on to highlight, and also, in fact, in a brief conversation with Nandan Nilekani, he did go on to talk about how such, visions should be implemented and also infused, especially in terms of the global companies as well.
All right, Shrija, thanks very much for that. The World Health Organization has warned that China's COVID impact at the moment may be being underrepresented. We know that cases in China are skyrocketing at the moment. And worryingly, the World Health Organization has said that China also has a very narrow definition of what constitutes COVID deaths. This comes after WHO members met Chinese scientists, and the UN agency then released data that had been provided by the Chinese centers as well as the American CDC. My colleague Priyanshi has more.
Till now, there were social media reports suggesting that China is underreporting COVID deaths. But now the World Health Organization has officially said it. The WHO's emergencies director warned that official statistics from China are not showing the true impact of the outbreak. He criticized China's quote-unquote very narrow definition of COVID deaths. Now, what's this definition? He said that China only records COVID patients who died of a respiratory failure as COVID deaths. And that's leaving many deaths unreported. He said that the official numbers underrepresent the true impact of the disease in terms of hospital admissions, in terms of ICU admissions, and particularly in terms of deaths. But China, in fact, stopped reporting COVID cases from December 22. And China has denied the WHO's claims. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that since COVID-19 began, China has shared information and data with the international community in an open and transparent manner. She said that we hope that the WHO Secretariat will take an objective and just position. But China's official numbers do actually seem far from reality. Videos from the country show an overburdened health infrastructure. In this video from Beijing, you can see that patients are lying on stretchers in hallways and receiving oxygen in the corridors as the hospital is packed. China is witnessing a huge surge in COVID cases ever since it lifted its zero COVID rules. But the true impact is still far from known.
Thanks very much for that, Priyanshi. Well, if you live in North India, you will know that it is cold, very, very cold right now. Delhi woke up to a minimum temperature of just under 3 degrees Celsius, which is incredibly low, lower than Dehradun and some other hill stations in the country. It's minus 6.5 degrees Celsius in Srinagar, all the way in Jammu and Kashmir.
Intense cold across North India. Delhi's minimum temperature fell to 3 degrees Celsius, the capital's lowest this season, and lower than the minimum temperature at Mussoorie, Nainital and Shimla. For those living in North India, weather experts say the cold will continue for at least the next 48 hours. However, for those working outdoors, such as construction workers, security guards and the homeless, the winter chill is a nightmare and a battle for survival.
बहुत काफिर है, ठंड के मारे सब ठिठुर रहे हैं।
मेरे ख्याल से जो बूढ़े लोग हैं, जब बच्चे वगैरह हैं, उनका इस सर्दी में खास तरीके से ध्यान रखना चाहिए ताकि जो बुजुर्गों को अच्छा फील हो और उनकी अच्छी जिंदगी व्यतीत हो।
Dense fog shrouds large parts of North India, with temperatures as low as 5 degrees below normal, and some regions across Rajasthan witnessing sub-zero temperatures. In Kashmir, where Srinagar and Pahalgam recorded minimum temperatures at least 3 degrees below normal, pipes are already starting to freeze. Sakshi Bajaj for NDTV.
And it's a particularly bitter winter for those who are homeless. Please do donate a blanket if you can. This is NDTV's blanket drive with the Uday Foundation. The details coming up there on your screen.